shifting now, though, to this. I always get a kick out of this, is when you have a game, nationally televised, standalone football game, in this case between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Atlanta Falcons. And there's a controversial call or no call in this instance. And everybody's like, oh, the fix is in. It's rigged. This is amazing. So we can show you the play. This is with a little over 4 minutes left in the game. The Atlanta Falcons have a third down in the red zone against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're down 5 points, 4 minutes to go, and Kirk Cousins throws a pass the end zone to Kyle Pitts. We can show you the play right here, and he is very, very, very obviously interfered with. It's Collinsworth was on the spot on it, and NBC, he didn't have to be. We all saw with our own eyes. Blatant missed pass interference called. No question about it. Should have set Atlanta up the 1 yard line, and my guess is they probably would have punched it in. But there's three things to look at in terms of this situation. Number one, even if they had gotten in, the Patrick Mahomes got the ball down, worst case scenario, 3 points with 4 minutes to go. Call me crazy. I think he goes down and at a bare minimum ties the game, because that's kind of what he does, and we'll detail more of that in just a moment. Second of all is the fact, it's like this is probably the worst analogy in the world, but I'm going to use it anyway. So when you talk about a nationally televised game, when you talk about the fact that it's Kansas City, it's the back-to-back Super Bowl champions, Sunday Night Football, there's no other games going on, everybody's locked into that one in Atlanta, Georgia. Whenever those situations happen, everything big, everything significant, good calls, bad calls, great plays, coaches, great coaches, good calls, all of that get magnified tenfold because it's all anybody's seeing. It's not like the game at 1 o'clock where it's the Colts and the Bears, for example, like yesterday, where Anthony Richardson was just throwing some duds yesterday. I mean, God bless Anthony Richardson, great kid. As bad of a quarterback performance as I've seen by a team in a win. He's bad, and nobody cares. It's 1 o'clock. I mean, not everybody's gonna be locked into that game. They're gonna be locked into their team at 1 o'clock, or have it in the corner TV on YouTube TV, or whatever the case may be, right? But if it's one game, everybody's locked in. Is the fact, and it's remarkable to me, every single mistake made gets magnified. Kyle Pitts was interfered with. Kind of like how on the second drive, Atlanta's second drive, where the Falcons scored their second touchdown in the game, that wouldn't have happened if Kirk Cousins if there was the hit on Kirk Cousins, that was, for reasons I can't quite explain, call for a roughing the passer. There were some bad roughing the passer calls in the NFL yesterday. That was one of the worst ones. I forget who it was for Kansas City, hit Kirk Cousins. Bad, and it was on a third down, by the way, which extended the drive. So number one, why this is virtually irrelevant is the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs, got screwed in a call earlier. Number two, every big call, bad call on national TV gets magnified. And number three, and this is kind of it goes to the analogy I was going to use, is when mistakes are made on national television, it's like this is a horrible example or a horrible analogy. It's like if you cheated on your wife, and it's the difference between hearing about it from your friend or actually seeing it. I mean, that's the difference. It's a bad call either way. But I hold no sympathy for the Atlanta Falcons for this one reason. Number one, after that play, after that no call, there was a fourth down for the Atlanta Falcons. They had an opportunity to kick a field goal to make it a 2-point game. Now, folks might say, well, it's Patrick Mahomes. Correct. Who had not played well in that game. The overall, the fear that and this goes back to what I said last week, the fear that the Kansas City Chiefs put in other teams, where against any other quarterback, any rational coach would say, oh yeah, kick the field goal, our defense is playing well, we'll get the ball back, go down, we got a great kicker, Young Hoku, great kicker, get in field goal range, walk it off and at home and go 2-1, right? But Mahomes and the Chiefs put fear in you. Nonetheless, they get stopped on fourth down, but they stop the Chiefs, get the ball back, drive it down to the red zone. It's like, oh my goodness, Atlanta's going to win this thing. And on a third down and short, they run the ball, not with Bijan Robinson, but with another talented running back, but not as good as Bijan, Tyler Algier. And they get stopped on 3rd and inches. Well, now you got to go with fourth down. And you decide on 4th down and that much, say, hey, you know what we're going to do? Instead of pushing our quarterback, our big, tall quarterback for a first down behind an amazing offensive line, we are going to run horizontal to the line of scrimmage with Bijan Robinson. Like with Kansas City's speed and physicality on the outside, that is a disastrous call by the Atlanta Falcons. Oftentimes, if you think about the Tuck Rule game with the Patriots and the Raiders, if you think about the Dez Bryant no catch game, Cowboys Packers, like infamous, awful calls in the playoffs, the team who gets, in theory, screwed over doesn't get a second chance. They did here. It's kind of like I remember years ago in the New Orleans Saints, when there was the terrible missed pass interference call on the Rams and the Saints. Remember there was all that controversy? And I said I have no sympathy. I didn't have a show back then, but I said at the time, no sympathy for the Saints. A, bad clock management put them in position to have to throw the ball on third down, where there was the missed call. And B, they got the ball to start overtime with a chance to win the game, and Drew Brees threw an interception. Sorry, crap doesn't go your way sometimes. And by the way, unless the officials, this is what drives me crazy, unless the officials are utterly incompetent, which was not the case last night, bad calls tend to offset themselves. Like I said, second drive of the game for the Falcons, awful roughing the passer call against Kansas City, which led to the Falcons getting a touchdown. In this case, a missed PI call, which cost the Falcons a touchdown. Bam, offset. There you go. 0-0. Kansas City still wins because Kansas City, as I talked about last week, there is an art to winning close games. We could show you Kansas City's last 6 games. That's all they've done is win close games, right? Beat the Bills by 6. They actually beat the Bills by 3. Beat the Ravens by 7. Beat the Niners by 3. Beat the Ravens by 7. Beat the Bengals by 1 and beat the Falcons last night by 5 points. Is that there is, in the fourth quarter, we are just not going to screw up. We are not going to put ourselves in position to compromise ourselves to where the other team can beat us. Now, last night was not the case as much as, say, the Bengals game, but still there were some mistakes. Mahomes did throw a bad interception early. Kansas City did go 3 and out when they had an opportunity to kind of shut the door and not give the ball back to Atlanta late. But just like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, like they always seem to come away with these close games. Just like the Golden State Warriors during their dynasty always seemed to just make one more smarter play than you did. Or maybe they don't even make a smart play. They just wait for you to make a dumb play. They wait for an Atlanta Falcons to inexplicably run the ball away from the line of scrimmage, or not away from the line of scrimmage, away from the first down marker on a 4th down and inches. They'll wait for you to screw up. It's the fear that Kansas City puts in you. It's the insecurity that you have when playing a dynasty, just like when you played the Patriots or played the Golden State Warriors or played the Bulls in the 1990s. So listen, at the end of the day we live in a country where, half the country thought the last election was rigged. Like everybody thinks everything is rigged. Sometimes it's just as simple as bad calls offset each other. Bad calls on nationally televised games are automatically more amplified the next day. And Atlanta had an opportunity to win the game late and they kind of blew it. They did. That's exactly what they did. So kudos to the Chiefs. And as for Atlanta, I don't think this is like a crushing loss for them. Atlanta's schedule is really tough in the middle. I've got a big game coming up against the Saints. Derek Carr turned back into Derek Carr. But late season, Atlanta's schedule, you got some Washington, you got some Raiders, some Giants, Panthers. So Falcons will be fine. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.